Hello and welcome to Westford DEI Committee's podcast that we call Inclusive Conversations. This is episode number 13. I am Anjali Rajput. I am the co-chair for the DEI Committee in Westford. And today's guest that we will be talking to is Kathryn. She is a school committee member. Kathryn Clear, we look forward to getting to know you and what is happening in the town in our efforts to keep the public informed about diversity in Westford and the people you work hard to support in various efforts. A little bit of background on Kathryn is that she has been a part of not only the school committee but also part of Disability Commission for past 2 years or so. Yep. And you have been deeply involved in many events across the town and many other initiatives as well. So diving a little bit more further into your background on your involvement, help me understand, why do you think this commission or this disability, like the existence of Disability Commission actually matters, and when was established?
Okay. Well, thank you, Anjali and Wendy, for this nice chat. I'm looking forward to it. One of my favourite topics. So in terms of the Commission on Disability, it was established by the state, Massachusetts, in the 1980s, 1983, I believe. And it's under the, there's Massachusetts law stating that every town and city in Massachusetts must establish a Commission on Disability. And they're very prescriptive on the seats that even have to be filled. So the people that sit on the commission, one must be an elected official, one must be a resident at large, one must be a parent or caregiver of someone with a disability, and then you must have the majority of your members must actually be people with disabilities. And when I say disabilities, it can be physical, emotional, cognitive. So it runs the gamut of what kind of disabilities are included when we're saying that word. And so the Commission on Disability in Westford has been going for many years. COVID kind of, it knocked a lot of people, but we've managed to get it up and running again. We've got new members joining, and Wendy is part of the commission with me, and so we've really been kind of re-establishing what the commission needs to be doing and what we're getting involved in town, which is really exciting because we've a whole new group of people being involved. So yeah.
Thank you for giving a little bit of more brief on this commission. Now, today we also have Wendy Gloyd, who is not only the member of DEI committee, but also the secretary of the Disability Commission. And I'm so glad to have you, Wendy.
I'm glad to be here. After I joined the DEI committee, I realized how many common things are applicable to the Commission on Disability. There's so much crossover in need and wanting to help serve the public, and I just felt drawn to join that, and it made so much sense to work on both of those at the same time.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Thank you. And at the same time, I will look forward to you kind of co-hosting with me and questioning Kathryn, but at the same time providing some answers yourself, because it's basically a discussion on what this Disability Commission does within the town.
The commission doesn't happen without Wendy right now. She's integral to keeping us running.
Before we dive a little bit deeper, there was an event on neurodiversity, and I saw some flyers on around March first week, and I think that the event happened on March 17th. Can you please provide us a little bit of more insight into the event? How did that come into the fruition, who participated, and how did this event go? Because this was the second time that
the event was the second time, but it's kind of like our third year of Neurodiversity Week. So there's a initiative, I suppose, a global initiative called the Neurodiversity Celebration Week. It was actually started by a then 16-year-old girl out of the UK, and she wanted really to kind of slightly change the conversation that can often happen around neurodiversity, and the whole point of it being that not to start thinking of it as a negative, but like A, understanding the awareness of it, but also B, seeing the benefits and the kind of almost superpowers sometimes that these, you know, differences bring in people. And it's not just focused on schools, it's about bringing that awareness into schools, into communities, into businesses. So being part of the CPAC originally, and obviously, you know, being on the school committee, I was kind of thinking that this would be, we were having conversations in CPAC on how do we bring more awareness. And so the first year we kind of did it out of CPAC. We brought it to school, to actually the school district. They really liked the idea. They trialled it across all their schools, and the staff and principals loved it. And since then, every year now for the last 3 years, they celebrate Neurodiversity Celebration Week in all the schools in Westford. They do read alouds, they do kind of, you know, wear different clothes day, or they have posters up, you know, celebrating neurodiversity. So they're having conversations, they're doing assemblies. And so that was amazing to see. I mean, it came into the school improvement plans and everything. So we felt, okay, we've got the conversation happening there. And then last year, we really kind of felt that we needed to start coming out in the community a bit more. Yeah.
So for audience members who don't know what CPAC means, I know that got thrown around in town a lot when I first got more involved. And what does CPAC mean, and who runs that?
So the CPAC is the Special Education Parents Advisory Council. We're also, like the Commission on Disability, we're also mandated by the state as well. So every town must establish a CPAC in their community once they, I believe, have a certain number of students with disabilities. And they advise school committee. And so I'm a member. I've enough to do, but Melissa Mackey's our current chair, and she's running a phenomenal group. And it's really a resource for parents who are starting or in their special education journey. And it's, if you have kids on 504s or IEPs, or even if you don't and you feel you want some information, like you think maybe something you might like to explore something, that's where the CPAC comes in. So so last year we were having this conversation, CPAC, we're like, how do we bring that conversation more out into the community around neurodiversity? And so one of the things is, one of our members, Suzanne Eaton, is essentially a master Lego builder. She's amazing, and is very passionate about neurodiversity herself. And so we teamed up, kind of going, how do we create an event that is all inclusive, but that gets the word out outside of the schools? And so when Suzanne works with this amazing group called the NELUG group, New England Lego Users Group. And a lot of them are like previous Lego employees or master builders, and they go around, they do some corporate stuff, but they also do a lot of community builds. And the idea is just celebrating Lego. But we just thought the connection between a Lego event and neurodiversity, they're just so intertwined in many ways. And, you know, it's a small, calm, you know, event. It's not overly stimulating in terms of sensory needs. We could kind of build something around it. And so the first year we did it 2 years ago, we built a 3D sculpture of the neurodiversity kind of symbol. It's that infinity loop and multicolored rainbow. We had kids and adults of all ages, Wendy included, down on our knees building along with the kids, and it was an amazing, amazing event. And it just created a moment to kind of stop and talk about neurodiversity and celebrate it. And then this year, because I think, again, myself and Wendy now kind of with the connection on the Commission on Disability and the connection with CPAC, we're like, this makes more sense that we're bringing in more community members to talk about it. I think the one thing with CPAC is, because you're typically dealing with families who are in the thick of special education journeys. There's only so much bandwidth that CPAC members have in creating awareness and advising and advocating. And so one of the conversations I'd had with Melissa was, how we bring our partners in town to also help lift because the parents are in the thick of it, even at the best of times, you know yourself, Anjali. So the Commission came on board this year as well as a sponsor of the event. And this year was so fun. We did a mosaic this year where we everyone was able to build a tile kind of based on a pattern, and then when you put all the tiles together, it made this whole picture out of Lego, and it was multicolored brain, and we had Embrace Every Mind, and you know, I think it was Westford 2025. But on top of that, we invited local businesses to come and kind of set up a small area where they could reach out and connect with families and community members of, these are services we provide in town, or this is some information, or here's what we do. And we had arts and crafts and snacks, and it was just a really, really lovely evening, and it was better again, I think, than last year. Mm-hmm. We definitely had more people again, so we're going for year 3 next year. I have no idea what we're going to build. I've already told Suzanne she's got to start working on it, but it's really just to create a moment to have the conversation in town about what neurodiversity is.
Looks like a great event and a great initiative.
It's awesome.
And my next question is for both of you, and I want you to take turns. So the first question is for you, keeping in mind, based on your experience in the past 2-3 years since you have been associated with the Disability Commission, what has changed? So what are, outside of this neurodiversity event and initiatives, what are the additional initiatives that has happened?
I think the big thing that's happening with the Commission right now is, I mean, the charge of a commission is always the same. The whole reason it was set up was to support people with disabilities under ADA law, you know, which is long established. Mm-hmm. But obviously it depends, you know, on town's priorities and where they are. And I think the big thing where we're coming at now, right now with the Westford group, is we just finished a transition plan, which, don't leave the name confuse you, because it doesn't really show exactly what it is. It's essentially an audit of our town buildings and facilities, programs, websites. I mean, it's a whole kind of 360 look at accessibility through the ADA lens of town facilities. And it was a big task. It's taken nearly a year to kind of find the group, do all the the visiting and auditing, and we just got the final report. And this is really now going to kind of guide the Commission where we're going now. I think before, the Commission tended to be advisory or reactive. Like if somebody had an issue, they would come directly to the Commission, and we still do that. But I think this Commission, we're trying to be a bit more proactive across the town, and getting out there in front of accessibility issues. So we have the transition plan. You know, we've been working really hard on making accessibility to town meetings, which you might see us going around in the lovely vests Wendy has. She's styled us. And in terms of making just a visibility that we're here, we're available if you need help in getting access to town meeting. We're involved in the town elections, again, making just sure that we're all kind of compliant in terms of, you know, voting booth heights and signage and accessibility to polling locations. So we're really kind of stepping out and trying to become a bit more proactive in the different endeavours and kind of things we're doing. This year as well, we also started that new initiative, the group on the Sociability Society, which was one of our members, Matty, shout out to Matty, that he kept saying to us, you know, he's a young man in his early 20s. Not everybody at that, you know, stage goes off to college. You know, there are many people of his age who graduate or go on and do other programs locally, but they don't have the option to go to college. And he's like, you know, where is that kind of social connection at that age? You know, he's not on PTOs yet, or you know what I mean, in town. And so we started this group working with Matty and his mom and some other members of our commission to try and start establishing some sort of a group that is connecting all those young adults, they're not kids, young adults, to make those connections and have that social aspect in town, because not everything in town works for people in terms of, if they have social anxiety, if they have sensory needs, and just feeling like there's a place that's welcoming and inclusive. And so we've done three events so far, because the neurodiversity Lego Week was another event, and I believe they're working on another one now, that group for May or June. So we're kind of hoping it's something that's going to take off. But I think that's the big change since I came on, and I think since Wendy has come on as well, is we're trying to be more proactive in our advocating.
And we've even pulled in other towns like Groton, Dunstable area, who have that same need for that same age, where they're past high school, but they're not yet established in families or other activities, and they're kind of seeking that opportunity to get together with others who might be able to understand. And for some of the youth, even though they're young adults, their parents come with them, and that's a comfort as well. So
they don't have to stay.
No,
we need to say you can absolutely drop and leave, which some of our parents do. But
But it is. There are parents who feel very comforted to know that they can be there, and know that if their child wants or their youth wants them to stay, they can stay, and it works out very nicely.
So what I heard from both of you is this Commissions on Disability is not only touching the neurodiversity, it's touching the social aspects of neurodiversity. Then it is also helping either the kids or people of all generations, right? From kids who have some challenges from the disability standpoint, all the way to the elderlies who may have access issues to town meetings and whatnot, or access issues to various town buildings, probably because those buildings have been in place for not only, I would say, decades, but centuries, and now they may not be very user-friendly for the people who has either mostly like physical disabilities and have issues really climbing up the stairs and whatnot. So this commission is touching pretty much everybody in the town, know. So oh my God,
and the other thing, Anjali, this was said, and we had a really interesting training a month or two ago with the Office on Disability, Jeff Dugan there, and he made a point, and I think it resonates. He was like, when we talk about people with disabilities, it might sound like we're talking about another group or somebody else. And he pointed out, and it's really stuck with me, any member of the public can join that group in a second. It takes one car accident, one fall, one something in a heartbeat to actually make you a member of that group with disabilities. And so to think that it's something that may never touch your life is, even as you said, like even as you age, if you don't have a serious accident or anything, you still may become hard of hearing. You may have vision issues. You may have, movement issues. So, this is going to touch your life in some shape or form at some point. And so it's really important that when we have these conversations, we are thinking of everybody.
Yes, no, I completely understand, and I agree with you that we are talking about people from all walks of life that it can touch. So I know that you're co-hosting with me, Wendy, but I have a question for you, because you are so deeply involved with not only DEI, but also with the Commissions on Disability. Is there a personal story that you can share with us today?
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So I have rheumatoid arthritis, and a lot of people don't know it because I take medications and it's pretty well managed. But I do have days where it's more of a challenge to do what I used to do. And it kind of came out of the blue in my 30s, mid-30s. I don't know what triggered it. And it's just one of those things. And it's like what Kathryn was talking about. Since my onset was what they call explosive, it just kind of floors you all of a sudden. It was a big learning curve on how I was going to treat it, and working with doctors and becoming more educated on what I was doing, what I was eating, how much energy I was expending each day. And it sort of can be in the beginning when you're just realizing you're disabled, you're drawing from a well and not really where your well used to be unlimited. It's limited now, and it really opened my eyes a lot. I also started caregiving for my dad, and cared for him heavily for about 2 years. And you look at the whole world through a different lens when you're caregiving, especially for an elder person. I think that has changed me a lot. I call myself the patron saint of older folks because if I see anybody struggling in the supermarket or in a parking lot, I look at it through a different lens. And when you see someone at a doctor's office that hasn't, their ride, it's an older person, their ride hasn't shown up and they're getting nervous, just kind of hanging with them and being with them till their person comes. And I think for me, those are my big, those were the big inspiration for what I do.
I want to add what you just said, Wendy, that when you are so close to the people who have certain special need and you see them struggling, I think it changes your perspective because I myself, I have aging parents and aging in-laws, and my in-laws visited us for a long time where my mother-in-law really struggled with her knees and health issues during their visit. I had that first, direct interaction, seeing her challenges and pain, and it just changed me as a person as well. So as you just said, right, when I see some elderly person really struggling in the supermarket, I would go ahead and ask, do you need help? How can I help you?
Yeah.
I think it does change.
It does. I mean, I would even think back to when I was a teacher, I was teaching kids who had, autism, ADHD, various learning disabilities. And I think back now because I've had a personal experience with those through my own family and my own kiddos. And I just look at myself going, I think I would be a very different teacher this time round, because you only know what you only know that first time. And it's really only when you get that personal experience and insight, you just get so much more clarity on the situations.
Right. Just realizing how heavy a door is to open.
Yeah.
You look at it in a whole different way.
Yeah.
So, Kathryn, I will ask you this. Are there any personal stories that brought you to advocacy?
Well, as I touched on. Well, like I mentioned, I had the last teaching post actually I had before moving to the States was in actually teaching the East End of Glasgow, which is a very low poverty area, one of the lowest in Europe. And I had a lot of different kids in my class from ADHD, autism, fetal alcohol syndrome. There was so many. And I think that was my first experience really in kind of that neurodiversity. But it really wasn't until a couple of years ago when one of my kiddos got an ADHD diagnosis, and that I realized that, the definition of ADHD, when we talk about it, we think about the boy who can't sit still and is just running around the house. And don't get me wrong, we had that too. But there's so much more that comes with it that you don't typically see or know. And it actually, I think, started originally within my extended family, because I think, you're convinced your mother's sitting there judging your parenting skills, and obviously you're not. But I started realizing I kind of need to advocate for my kids and within my extended family for them to understand that, they maybe react to things differently or they see something differently. And from there, then I think, I joined CPAC more as a I'm in a very different school system than I'm used to, and I don't know how this system works in terms of special education. And so I started learning through CPAC. I mean, I literally would, you won't believe it, but I said nothing for a lot of the first initial meetings. I was quiet, trying to learn. And it was more, I think, then as I came onto school committee and learned more and more and had, you know, more experiences with my kiddos, that I just became so passionate of kind of going, you know, Wendy, you know, you use a cane and people can see that. But when you have some neurodiverse disability, you look a lot the same like everybody else, and people make assumptions and have expectations around that. And I found that sometimes I was just so frustrated, kind of going, people need to understand that there is diversity out there, and that maybe just because you have said something in one way or reacted in a certain way doesn't necessarily make you weirdo or strange or funny. But, you know, and so that's really where the advocacy started for me, was kind of, and I just think, you know, even that conversation spills out across the board when we're talking politically. It's like, let's understand where the other person is coming from. Let's maybe give some empathy and some sympathy, and maybe let's start with good intentions for everybody. Yeah. And so that's where the kind of the path started.
I also want to add something to that, Kathryn. So a lot of times, if a person has had an exposure, either through family or friends or through education, those people would know how to act or react to the people that you interact with has special needs. But if someone is completely unaware, untouched, they just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So I think it's a matter of just not the education to and with the people who are special needs. It's the education about, like, people have these needs, and this is how you may be able to interact with them effectively.
Yeah.
If some kind of education is provided and is available to everybody in that town, like if you can go online and read about it, if there are resources, how do I act with this person, that person, more informed we are, better we will be in interacting with the people who have special needs.
And I think even, because that's a huge take on someone saying go out there and do the research. But I think even just having the conversation of being open and inclusive and welcoming, so that somebody in the community can say to you, oh, you know, I have ADHD, or sorry, I have autism, and being, you know, open to that, and, you know, not writing someone off just because you think there's a label then. I think that's really important.
I do feel, just not within the town, but coming from the corporate world, I'm in HR, I feel that is a huge leap that the world needs to take, because every organization, school system, town, people in general, we are very, very behind.
Yeah. Well, no, and it's interesting. I think that's one of the big things about the neurodiversity, you know, celebration week. There's more and more conversations having about how you want to have people with autism on your team. You want to have people with dyslexia on your team. You people who have ADHD might have the most disorganized desk, but if you give them a project that is on their favorite topic, you will have such laser focus and attention to detail. And so I think, like you said, Anjali, that's where the biggest conversation needs to happen. You know, just because you're doing an interview and somebody's coming off like, oh my gosh, they were all over the place. Let's stop. Let's think, maybe that person does have ADHD. Let's ring their references. Let's actually see what are they like in their day-to-day job. You know, are they good? Let's give people that chance and not write them off. And I think you're right. The corporate world is probably lagging behind most in that. You know, I hear a lot of them talking about like returning to the office and stuff. For some people, that's an issue, you know, being in a big corporate environment, that's sensory overload, you know. And so I think we've got to start thinking about how we can be flexible but still get the best from our staff members.
Agreed. Thank you.
I also think that for a lot of folks, when they think about ADA regulations, they think about it costing a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I think I've learned so much with us working with the assistant town manager.
Yeah. Mike Edwards.
He's
awesome.
He really has a good foundation and experience of understanding what quick fixes can be done. And when he was working on that transition plan and helping lead that, he was keeping the focus towards let's do things that aren't going to cost a lot, because a lot of the buildings or playgrounds in town were created a long time ago. Regulations were a lot
Don't
different.
think the ADA existed in the 1700s.
Right. But there can be just little tweaks that we can make. And as we were looking at the plan just recently, I know we have still a lot more to dig through, but there are a lot of low-hanging fruit that can be handled without a lot of cost.
It's like moving a table, or putting a handrail there, or so it doesn't always have to be a big thing.
But also in looking at the library, it was helpful for us to look at the blueprints of what that was going to be and be able to weigh in on a few things before construction. And I know we're going to be pulled in again towards the end of construction because they're just little things about approaches to a hallway or an elevator.
I think the architects typically look with stuff like that. They're kind of going, oh, what are the ADA regulations specifically? But then they don't always necessarily think of, well, how is this, in terms of for visually impaired or hearing impaired. So it's bringing that extra element in, to those building and processes. And you want to be in there this is the time to be in there when it's not going to cost you 3 times to retrofit or whatever. So I'm really excited about the library project.
That brings me to the next question, even though we are very, very close to the time and little over a minute. What are the challenges that you see this commission is facing in order to get things done? It could be budgetary, it could be political, it could be policy-wise. Do you guys feel that there are some barriers?
Don't believe in barriers. You just have to figure out how to get around them. I think some of it is budgetary. It's something that we're actually beginning to work on to figure out with Select Board and how can we get some sort of a small budget. There are pathways to it, so that's one thing we need to look at. I think the big thing for the Commission I'm finding is that just having members who have the bandwidth and the ability to give us time to really do the work, because there's only so many of us. I think we're trying to encourage people to join the Commission, even if you're not a fully fledged voting member. We really want, what we're looking for is associate members, is what we're calling them. People who are passionate about it. They may not have a vote, but their voice most certainly would be appreciated. And not to just turn up to our meetings to kind of discuss an issue, but take a project, run with it, own it, improve things, project manage it, because I think, many hands make light work. And, when you are working with most of your members having a disability of some point, their bandwidth is limited or can have moments where they have limitations. Yes. So I think and I love the fact we have those voices on our Commission, but I also have to be respectful of how do we achieve everything, when we want. So I think that's our biggest thing at the moment, is trying to get as many associate members to join. You may not have an official vote, but absolutely you can vote with your voice in many, many ways.
So you're recruiting through this podcast as well, looking for people to join.
I mean, you won't find a citizens advisory thing for this position, in the sense that because it's not official seats, although I think we may have 1 or 2 opening in June. But if you just want to get involved, and we have our webpage, we have our emails all on that webpage, and you can, through the Westford Town website, and just reach out and email us. And, we've got some new members joining that I think their background and expertise is really exciting. So, I think no barriers, just problems to solve.
That's a great approach.
I think with town meeting, I hear a lot of discussion about it having to be in person, and we are working a lot on that. And I hope the community starts to see the fruits of that labor. And also, I think accessibility gets thrown around a lot when people actually mean convenience.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people saying, well, town meeting isn't accessible, but what they really mean is not convenient.
Yeah.
I have to take my kids here and there.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be disrespectful of them, but I feel like it is a big difference when you're looking at a person who physically cannot leave their home, they're homebound, and they want to be able to participate versus someone who can't necessarily take the day off.
And I think, Wendy, on that point, I know we're running out of time, Anjali. I think it's really important to say that the Commission actually has ways around this. Under ADA, we have ways to help people access town meeting who have genuine accessibility issues. So don't think because you can't get to the hall doesn't mean you can't participate. We've done that now quite successfully in the last couple of town meetings. And so, don't be deterred.
Raise your hand.
And we're here.
And email the
Commission.
The Commission.
So before we wrap up, I just wanted to kind of finalize that particular thought. I think because people have kids, and kids are involved in so many activities that they cannot miss, and they cannot hire services who can actually take the kids while both parents are at the town meeting or one of the parent is at the town meeting. I think what they are looking for is a time when it does not impact their kids' activities. But I also understand and I want to acknowledge the fact that having a town meeting at a time when it works for everyone, right? People of all ages, all stages in life.
Does that even exist?
It's next to impossible. It's just not practical, right? So I think that the Commission on Disability is really trying hard to make it accessible to people who are impacted, who can be covered under the ADA, and then make the town meetings accessible, and everything else is just work in progress to make it work for everyone or
it's
most
a
of the
select
people.
Board thing to figure out.
And I think that everybody's working towards that particular goal. I understand that, as we are looking ahead for the next year, what I heard from you, the goal is to look at the transition plan that you guys have received, see what are the changes that needs to be made, thinking and looking at the barriers, probably its policies, budget, and find the ways to work through those so that you can make a very accessible and a great plan for the community. That's what I heard.
And I mean, that's the big thing that the state wants to see, that if you have facilities in your town that aren't ADA compliant, at least if they see that you have a plan, even if it's long term, that actually covers you. So that's where we'll be doing our homework for the next couple of months.
That's perfect. So it was so glad to have both of you, the Secretary of the Commissions of Disability, Wendy Clear. Thank you for being here, co-hosting, at the same time being a co-guest as well, answering so many questions.
Thank you, Anjali.
And thank you, Kathryn, for coming over, taking the time from your Friday afternoon.
Anytime. I am totally happy to have the husband do some parenting for a change.
Thank you again, and thank you for our listeners.
Thank you.
Thank you.